welcome to Graceful Healing, a podcast to get straight talk about healing and living again. My name is Maureen Lake. I'm a holistic health coach, speaker, author, and thyroid disease fighter. Each week, I'll be bringing you graceful conversations to inspire you to seek new ways to hit the reset button to catapult your health and vitality to new levels. Listen in and open your heart to all the new possibilities. Are you ready? Let's do this. Before I introduce my guest today, I want to share with you a little bit about our amazing retreat, The Joyful Journey. Have you been feeling called to Tucson? We have a rare opportunity to treat you to a special weekend where your sole focus is on you. This fun-filled, educational, and spiritual weekend is all-inclusive, including delicious farm-to-table meals at the beautiful Tanque Verde Ranch. Each day is tailored to you and your intentions, including a personal nutritional analysis, guided healing sessions, meditation, journaling, and play. Lots of play. If this sounds good to you, please contact me at gracefulhealingpodcast@gmail.com, and I will send you all the details. Come join the fun. It's September 20th through 22nd. Today I had this amazing guest. Barbara Condron began studying dreams in the 1960s, teaching in the 70s, researching in the 80s, organizing her data in the 90s, and tracking global trends in the 2000s. For her, dreaming is an advanced form of communication, accessible while awake or asleep. Barbara is an author, teacher, and internationally known speaker. She has interpreted over 10,000 dreams for people from all walks of life and at all ages. Her rich background is bringing clear light to our human journey to understand life, death, and our continuing existence beyond. Trust me, this is a fascinating discussion that you don't want to miss. I'm so excited for my listeners to hear about Tanya and her story because I'm telling you, perimenopause and menopause is such an important topic for all women. And let's face it, we're all going to go through it sometime in our lives. So Tanya, I can't wait for you to share your personal story with us and also to share how you ended up where you are today. Like, what was your journey like?
Right. Well, I'm so happy to share what I can see about this such an important topic for women about perimenopause and menopause. And first of all, I like to define what perimenopause and menopause is really, because you may have listeners who are listening in and they're like, I'm in my early 40s. That's nothing to do with me.
Oh, yeah.
And that was me in my early 40s. So that was the beginning of my story too, because I came into my early 40s and I thought, I didn't have to think about menopause, right? I hadn't heard of the term perimenopause. And I thought menopause was like something that women experienced at 51. And I also thought, well, it must be, few hot flushes and probably it's over by 52. Right? That was my perception of it. And perimenopause is the time of change that leads up to what has now become a moment in time, menopause, which is the point in time 1 year after your last period. But even a few decades ago, we knew society understood menopause to be a much longer period of time. So it's become squashed into this point of time. And then everything leading up to it, those years of change that can be 10 years, 12 years even, and could even start in our late 30s, is now called perimenopause. And the problem of that sort of division of like perimenopause, menopause, and then postmenopause is that many women come into their 40s with this knowledge gap, which is what I had. And that's really where we can start my story, because I was about 43 years old and I started suffering from symptoms. My immune system was really low. I kept getting like all the viruses my kids brought home, and I had some hair loss. And so I went to an acupuncturist and she treated those things and I felt a little bit better. But then I started getting a lot of migraines and eczema and rashes on my skin. And really, really bad mood swings, which was really unlike me. And I just thought I was going a bit crazy. And I kept on trying to treat each individual symptom. So there may be women right now listening going, oh, wait, I've also got all these symptoms. Mm-hmm. And what's so interesting is women come into midlife and we often experience symptoms that we've only ever experienced before if we've been pregnant or in our teenage years. And that is a sign that there is some kind of hormonal change and sensitive time going on. But I was experiencing these symptoms for a few years, running around, trying all different kinds of treatments, trying to treat each one individually, and going very much down the natural route that I could, where I could. Mm-hmm. And then I heard a webinar by Dr. Christian Northrup, who's a leading light in women's health, mm-hmm. and especially at midlife. And she said, a lot of women in their 40s have what I would term as PMS on steroids. And I was like, oh my goodness, PMS on steroids.
Yeah, really.
That sounds like me. That sounds like my experience. And because I was having all this moodiness and also tender breasts and all kinds of other symptoms, they were just all like multiplying. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first time I'd heard about perimenopause. And so I was like, oh my goodness, how could that be? I thought I was well educated about women's health. How could it be that I didn't know about perimenopause? How could it be that I thought menopause was just this like very short period of time in our early 50s? And so I started speaking to my 40-something friends, and a lot of them were experiencing symptoms, and no one had really heard about perimenopause. And so this was a few years back now. This was about 7 years ago, but it was like it was shocking for me. I was like, well, how could that be? Mm-hmm. Like, I thought we were all, educated women and we should know our bodies, and we're all experiencing these challenges and these symptoms, and no one knows what's really going on. And then those that had heard a little bit about perimenopause, it was very much like, oh yeah, that's my hormones getting it wrong. And as I started realizing there was this huge knowledge gap, and that everything in the main sort of the main message about perimenopause was that your hormones are getting it wrong or malfunctioning and thus need to be fixed, I went on a journey of exploration. And I thought, well, if I manage to solve my symptoms, then I'm going to share what I know, because I was getting more and more knowledge. And really from the beginning, I kind of felt, well, why would it make any sense that I need to be fixed, right? Why would it make any sense that women en masse are malfunctioning, right? If we mm-hmm. manage to go through from being a baby to a toddler to a girl to a teenager to a woman, and then, many times being pregnant and giving birth, like, how is it that our body got all that right? And then it comes to midlife and it seems to be getting it wrong, because women are experiencing all these symptoms and needing intervention. Mm-hmm. And that really set me off on a path of trying to find, well, what's really behind our symptoms, and what if it's not our hormones? And I discovered that, in fact, symptoms are not a sign of a malfunction, but are a message from our body trying to wake us up. Oh. So for each woman, that message may look a bit different, but so often the message is around our life choices and the way we live our life, and so often it's around stress.
Yes.
And for me, certainly, it was definitely around stress. So when I realized that, and then I realized how to unravel that, miraculously, all my symptoms just disappeared.
Oh, wow.
And, that didn't make any sense when you look at it in the medical model, right? Mm-hmm. Because the medical model is like, oh yeah, your hormones are in flux. And whether you look at it on a mainstream medical model or even an alternative model, like everyone is going in and trying to fix your hormones or balance your hormones or something like that. And I discovered that actually when you really try and tune into what your body is trying to tell you, you can reach cure for your symptoms. And that cure is already within each one of us.
This is fascinating. I know for myself, I ended up having a hysterectomy when I turned 40, and I was still, having my periods regularly every month, but I had severe endometriosis, and they left my ovaries, and then they really tried to talk me into taking replacement hormone therapy, and I refused only because I have a history of breast cancer in my family, and I didn't want to go down that route. But Gosh, I wish I would have known your knowledge then so I could have made my pathway a little bit easier, because now I'm really fascinated to find out what you learned and share that with others. So what kind of stuff did you find out?
Right. So I'll go back a little bit in my story. So what had been happening in my life was that I used to work in technology companies, and then I became a mom, and I left that career in marketing in technology companies, and I was an at-home mom for 6 years. We have 3 kids, and then I started to think about my return to work, and I had an idea to create a gift book for new moms that would help mums through the early years of motherhood. And I worked with, it was just an idea. And I thought, oh, yeah, I can do that. I used to work in marketing. I used to produce collateral. Well, how difficult could it be to produce a full color hardback book? Right?
Yeah.
and sell it. And actually, the whole creative process was a dream. And I really had very little thinking about it. I just went from step to step, and it all came together. And I had a friend who was working on it with me. And then I took the project on and went and self-published. I was like, oh, I can just self-publish. Who knew? Anyone can sell their book on Amazon. So I went ahead and self-published the book. And the book won international awards and rave reviews from mom and the media and everything.
Wow.
And I had set myself these huge targets, like sales targets, and I couldn't sell the book. And this kind of was challenging the story I used to hold about myself, that I was the kind of woman that would set goals and achieve them, because I could point to many areas of my life throughout my life where I could say, oh yeah, there I set a goal and I achieved it, and there I set a goal and achieved it, and those were the stories I sort of brought all together and made that into my personality and the kind of woman that I was. And when I went back into work and was setting up a business for the first time and trying to sell this book and failing, I took that all very personally. And I thought that meant I was a failure, that I used to be at the top of my game in my career, and now it was over. I used to be the breadwinner. I was now just losing money. And what kind of feminist woman was I when I couldn't even earn the money that I thought I was going to earn? And it was all impacting also how I was able to mother my children, because, I was trying to work more and more hours and late nights, and I was more and more exhausted. And all of this was going on. And what I kept hearing inside and believing was that I'm not enough.
Why do we do that to ourselves? Gosh.
We do that to ourselves. And there may be women listening going, yeah, but that was only around books. But, it wasn't. It was something much bigger about who I was.
Right.
I am not enough in any kind of role that I thought I should be fulfilling, right? The role that I should be playing in my family. And so when I talk to women these days, I hear that theme just come back again and again, and for women, it's different. For one woman, it's I'm not enough because I never had children, or I'm not enough because I had children and I didn't go back to work, or I had children and I went back to work straight away, or because my mother never loved me, or because my career is, behind me and I can't get back to it since having children, or whatever, or because I'm in the place where I didn't imagine that I would be, or because I've never had a great relationship, or because, we create these stories which are made of thought, and then those thoughts come through our head and they can be quite persistent.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we take them seriously, right? No one else was actually telling me that I was a failure, and no one else was telling me, oh, you used to be the breadwinner and now you can't even, sell your books. No one was building that story for me apart from myself, by taking the thoughts that came through my head seriously and believing that the feeling that they created represented something real in my life. And that's a complete misunderstanding. Those thoughts were coming through my head. I was taking them really seriously. There was this really bad feeling being created because I was also in this sensitive time of change, of perimenopause. And my body was reacting by actually sending me a feeling to try and wake me up and say, hey, maybe take things a little bit lighter. Maybe drop that I'm not enough story, because that would be healthy. And I thought that reflected, because it felt so real, that reflected something real about my life, that perhaps I really wasn't enough, that perhaps I really was a failure. that perhaps, my career was over, or whatever it is, because it felt real. When actually my feelings were just pointing to the thinking that I was having at the time and how seriously I was taking it. And when I realized, oh my goodness, these thoughts that are coming all the time through my head that I'm not enough, I actually don't need to take them seriously. And I actually think my life would be easier if I don't take them seriously. That was an insight that felt really small at the time, but apparently my body was really happy. I really saw it, because literally all my physical and emotional symptoms went away.
Wow.
And
so kind of just allowing yourself to release all that stress. I mean, is that basically what?
Yeah, I think that midlife is a time by design that our body wants us to learn something, right? So in our 20s and 30s, we could maybe have kind of relationships that didn't really nourish us, and have that kind of job that would drive us crazy, and, do all kinds of things that didn't really serve our best interests, maybe. And our bodies would often let us get away with it. And come midlife, the hormones don't get it wrong. They line up perfectly to create this sensitive time, right? Just like our hormones line up to create a sensitive time in pregnancy to protect us and the unborn child, right? So that we don't go off into too much stress, that we don't overwork and ignore our health, right? Because when we do that, when we're pregnant, the symptoms come up really quickly. Sure. And when they do, no one comes along and says, oh, we need to fix your hormones because you're so sensitive, right? No, you go to a doctor, well, are you stressed? Are you working too much? Here, take 7 days sick leave, right? But at midlife, we think there's something going wrong inside, when actually it's this beautiful lineup of hormones, and our body's like trying to encourage us to learn something new, and to learn what actually is going to protect us at midlife and protect us from here on in for decades to come. Because chronic disease, as we age, is not inevitable, right? But we need to learn what is going to keep us healthy. And that is dropping those thoughts that we take so seriously and allow them to define us. And perhaps it is tweaking our diet, and perhaps it is exercising, and perhaps it's, some other things that we can do to shift our lifestyle, to make adjustments to good health. And when we do that, then our body almost rewards us, because that's what it wants us to learn, right? And so it's by design that at midlife we learn something new that's going to help us as we move forward.
I love that. I love that. You're making me really understand. I always talk about my thyroid disease as a real gift, which dropped in my lap at midlife too. And it was due to chronic stress. But if I didn't have that facing me, I wouldn't have made all the changes that I made in my life to become a healthy woman. So it's kind of along the same thing. Sometimes like your hormones are rearranging themselves at different points and stages of your development, and you just have to accept it. I mean, there's nothing you can really do or should do to change it. It's just part of life. But when it's plopped in your lap, it does give you so many more opportunities to change in a positive way, in a holistic way. So,
right.
I mean, did you do any kind of like meditation or things along those lines to help you with this?
Well, I tried, before I had this one insight that, I often say to women that I work with, I wish I could sort of copy and paste it and just hand it to you in a way, that because I saw something that I needed to see. But before I reached that point, I was trying everything to make myself feel better, because I just felt like I was going mad. Like the PMS on steroids that I had heard about, that I thought, that sounds like me, is because I was having PMS for 2 weeks every month. So from ovulation to menstruation, I was full-blown PMS.
Wow.
And the thing is that I now understand that was just the sensitive time in my cycle where my body was just really keen to get a message through to me. And the message was a few words, just please lighten up, because that's going to preserve your health. Right? So we think what a pain, and how awful, and the body is betraying me, and why can't I be like I am in my 20s and 30s? Well, there's a point to it. And this is the beauty of midlife change, is that we are actually supposed to change. And it's just, in the West, we think, oh no, I'll just keep on, right? I'll keep on working as I've always worked, and looking as I've always looked, and exercising as I've always exercised, if that's someone's thing. And then when women begin to listen to their bodies, like even if they've been running marathons and triathlons or whatever, they're like, well, I just don't feel like that anymore, right? Because the body's like saying, I need energy in a different way.
Right.
And so it's really this amazing time to really tune into what our body needs and what our spirit needs, which is so, I speak to women and they're like, yeah, I'm raw diet and I exercise and everything, and I still got all my symptoms. So, and there will be women who are like, oh, I just cut out coffee and wine and all my symptoms went away. So, if that works for some women, that's great. But so often it's like something spiritual that we need to pass through and understand about ourselves. And it's something about reconnecting to what we love and really putting ourselves in the center of our attention in terms of, well, what do I need to nourish myself? So
yeah, absolutely. So with the women you work with, how do you guide them through understanding what it is they need? I mean, I'm sure it's all individual and really personalized, but is there something that, I guess, I know it's all different for everybody, but any key points that seem to come up over and over again that women need to do during this time besides, the obvious?
Yeah, it's really it's less about doing. I mean, sometimes the thing that I'm trying to bring women to is really a place where with calmness, they can listen to their body in a different way from how perhaps they've been, relating to their body, right? I speak to women sometimes and they're like, I just kind of realized I have a body, right? Because I was so busy with my life, and just, pushing through and just treating symptoms like on the surface. Like I really never listened, and I really never connected with this wisdom that runs through me. So it's really about really taking like a 180-degree turn from the way we relate to women's health so often in the West, to really saying, well, what happens if my body is brilliant, right? What happens if that wisdom that's always run through me since I've been born and even before still runs through me at midlife and is there to guide me? So what could my life look like if I can come from that assumption that my body is brilliant? And then how can I tune into the wisdom of my body to try and understand what it's trying to tell me? Now, when we live with, like we so often do, especially at midlife, like mental load of the career, the family, the parents, everything that's going on that so often falls into a woman's lap, right?
Right.
It's really hard to listen for something else.
Sure.
Right? Because we're so busy with just juggling everything in life. And so if there's anything to do, it could be just really slowing down. And it's just bringing an awareness into a woman's life, awareness about the way her body is working for her and not against her, and an awareness of how our experiences in life are created, which is we cannot experience anything in life from the past, from the present, from the now, from the symptom, except through thought. And so it's really looking at, well, how does thought work in our life? And what happens if we don't take our thoughts seriously? Like, is that possible? Like, is it possible that our thoughts just come randomly and don't define us? Well, it is, because our thoughts are not who we are. We're something much more magical and deeper and eternal than thoughts that come and thoughts that go.
Right. And so many times our thoughts are based on unrealistic things. Like just listening to you talk, the first thing I thought of when you're overloaded and you're working and you have your parents and you have your children and you have this and you have that. And then if you were to pause and take a moment, I personally would feel guilty for that. And
Right.
so I would have all these thoughts about, well, I don't have time for this because I need to be doing, I'm Superwoman. I can do all these other things. And then the guilt creeps in, and then that creates so much more tension. And then you get those negative thoughts, exactly what you're talking about. And it's just so hard to rethink and kind of just take a positive spin on things when you're so used to being worn out and tired and stressed. But it's exactly what we need to do. Exactly what we need to do.
I mean, the whole of society is not arranged to nourish women through their cycles. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, from the time we start menstruating through to the time we're pregnant and postpartum, and then through perimenopause and menopause, society wasn't created by women. The way society functions wasn't determined by women around their cycles. It doesn't really take that into account whatsoever.
Right.
So when we come to midlife, there isn't a natural place where we can go where someone will tell us, oh, you just need to be compassionate for yourself right now, right? Because your body is going through a sensitive time, and you need to rest more, and you need to free up your mind more, and you need to do more of what you love. And if we understand that this is actually part of the design, like our bodies are built to protect us, right? Not only for ourselves, but for the good of the species, right? There is a role that postmenopausal women play in society. Now, scientists had to go off and study orca whales, which are also one of the few species that actually have menopause, to discover what a positive role postmenopausal orca whales, have in their pod.
Oh my gosh, that is so interesting.
Yeah, because they discovered that when there's a postmenopausal whale in the pod, then she directs the whole pod to feeding grounds when food is scarce. She is involved in conflict resolution. And they've realized that if the grandmother figure is not yet postmenopausal, then her younger children don't do as well, right? So that it seems like the evolution built it in that she would be around to help the pod without having to care for younger children, right? So she goes through menopause and then keeps on leading the pod as a postmenopausal whale, right? Now, anyone who's had, let's say, sick children at home, and then a grandmother figure walks in, we know, like the scientists went off to the orca whales and came up with the grandma effect, right? But we know that, oh my God, oh, what a relief, some woman who doesn't have a baby attached to her breast has walked in to provide me help, and she has knowledge of, childcare. So, we know how useful that can be, of course, how useful that can be. And it's not only in, child rearing and childcare. Like, we have wisdom that we have gathered from our decades on this earth. And we are supposed to be able to share that with younger generations. So if we take as given that evolution has created a way that we remain healthy for the good of the species, right, then we do need to remain healthy for the good of the species. And what fun, it's also for the good of us too.
Sure.
Right? We don't have to be thinking about the whole species, but it's part of the design. That's it. Our brilliance, our body's brilliance is part of the design, and that we will be able to move through menopause, move to postmenopause, become what I like to call the wiser woman, right? And really step into that role. And the changes we go through at midlife are designed to help us step into that role.
That's beautiful. That's so fascinating. I just love this whole topic. It's such a wonderful way to think about our health and our lives, and not always, like you were saying, I know personally, like when I started going through menopause, part of you gets angry and like, oh gosh, why do I have to go through this? And, I can't sleep at night and I'm cranky. But if you just have a totally different outlook about it, it can change everything. It really can.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, we cannot experience a symptom but through thought. So, you can have a symptom and it's okay if you go off onto that. This is really inconvenient. I really don't want this night sweat right now, right?
Right.
And yet you can also have symptoms and it's like, okay, this is just what my body is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Here's an example. I used to have night sweats when I was having all my symptoms, and then they went away. And several months ago, I had this incident of sort of online bullying. Never mind. Some women don't like my work and then they get really angry about it. And I was taking it really personally, and getting quite upset about it, rather than remembering, oh yeah, my work, women can have different experiences of my work. There are women who love my work, and there are women who find it, when I tell them that they don't have to blame their hormones, they find that really frustrating because they just want to fix their hormones, and then they think they'll be fixed, right? So they think there must be the pill that's going to give them the quick fix.
Exactly.
And so I come along and I'm like, well, maybe we can approach it from a different way. So this was all going on. And then I was taking it all personally. And then I had a few nights of night sweats. I'm still in perimenopause. And at 3 a.m., the night sweats could come and I could just sit with them. And I didn't have to create a story around them. And I know that I could create the story of, oh, I should know better. I teach this stuff. What do you mean? I haven't got symptoms again. What do you mean? But I knew, okay, I'm having this tough time at the moment. And I haven't yet seen how I'm going to get to the next step of what I want to do with this whole online situation. But I will. And whatever thoughts are coming through me will just pass. And then maybe I'll have a fresh thought. And in the meantime, my body's just reminding me, oh, yeah, you're in a sensitive time. You're now going through some stressful days. And that's just what it needed to do. Right. And so within about 3 days, the night sweats went away again.
Wow.
But, every symptom that we get, we're going to experience it through our thinking. And there is a different experience to be had from every single symptom. And I know women are like, no, you don't know, when I'm having a hot flush and it's the 10th of the day. Well, when we get stressed from the hot flushes, then our body wants to remind us even more that we're getting stressed.
Exactly.
So it's kind of this vicious circle. But it doesn't matter, though. That's what I want to tell listeners if they are experiencing symptoms, because it doesn't matter. You're on a journey. And I also, spent years experiencing symptoms until I could really understand what my body wanted me to know. And that's really what's so amazing about this work, is that every woman will be on a different journey, but we're all made of the same stuff, and our bodies really work in the same way. And our bodies are designed to help us and to push us to healthy living, right? They always are.
Yeah.
And we know that, for example, if we overwork and get too stressed and we've got too much going on in our life, and then all of a sudden we'll get, like a really bad cold or the flu or something like that, right? And then we're like, oh God, I just overdid it, right? So we'll know in those situations that, oh, what a surprise. Now my body's telling me, you didn't want to rest. Now you're going to rest because you need to stay in bed.
Exactly.
So and then we know it. We see that bigger picture. We're like, oh yeah, I was just doing too much, and now I'm going to rest, and then I'll maybe learn my lesson, and then maybe I'll forget. But the thing is, it's okay when we forget. We don't need to blame ourselves, and we don't need to blame ourselves for our symptoms.
Right.
It's okay. We're on a journey, and we're on a journey where we can learn something new and exciting. And like I said, something that's really going to serve us for decades to come.
Yeah, I love that. I love we're all on a journey. That is so true. It's perfect. So just to sum up a little bit, tell us about what you do now, who you serve. I know you've written a book and you have another one in the wings, so to speak.
Right.
So I'd love for people to hear about that.
Yeah. So I set up the wiserwoman.com website to help women have a different experience of perimenopause and menopause, and to share really what I'd seen, which is really not anything close to the dominant narrative about midlife change, and how it is possible to cure your symptoms through something which is inside us all, right? I know that a lot of women, they go out and I used to do this too, from acupuncture to Bach remedies, to healing, to this kind of treatment, to gratitude journal. Like I was doing like a lot of things to try and deal with my symptoms, when actually, when we learn to look inside, we can understand what our bodies want us to know, and we can have a different experience of midlife change. So when I first set the website up about 4 years ago, so I was just, gently sharing and seeing what happened. And lo and behold, just from one coaching call, women can see an end to their night sweats, or clear up their stomach problems, or have improvement of their skin, or have their anxiety fall away. And I can't promise that to every woman that that's going to happen after one call. But I take women on a journey to really experience something different and really amazing about what is going on with our bodies at midlife, because our bodies aren't betraying us. They're really, really on our side and trying to help us. And so that's how I work with women. I work with them one-on-one. I have an online course. I have lots of information over on my blog that women can find, again, on thewiserwoman.com. If you just go to the blog, there's lots and lots of information that you can find. And I'm just, I give talks. I just share what I can, because I know that this dominant narrative of that women are somehow destined to malfunction at midlife is so prevalent and so easy for us to believe somehow, because that's just the way society is set up. And you know what? It comes from ancient times where they thought women were just subnormal, right? And then postmenopausal women were even less normal than the subnormal, because they couldn't be defined by their reproductive role anymore. And it went through the ages, and the witch hunting in the Middle Ages. Like, most of the witches who were burnt, they were women at midlife. And who were probably waking up to, something new and challenging something dominant in society.
Exactly.
And then the whole theory of menopause being a hormone deficiency disease that came out from the last century came out at the time when women were being put to sleep to give birth.
Yep.
Right? Because that's what they thought. Like, women's bodies don't know how to give birth. And when women were being told after they gave birth that you should give them formula milk because that's more nutritious than the milk that you produce naturally, right? And so the whole theory of this hormone, menopause as a hormone deficiency disease, and the need for us to take estrogen or whatever, right? Or any combination of hormones, the need for us to get fixed, came from that time in history where doctors believed across the board in women's health that women's bodies don't know. So what I'm trying to do is change that idea, challenge that idea wherever I can, and help women wherever I can to really reach a cure for their symptoms. Such a simple way, because no woman is broken. She doesn't need fixing.
Right.
But we just need to come back in tune with the wisdom that is flowing through all of our bodies.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for you, because we've lived in such a male medical model, and now hopefully things are starting to change, because it's just part of our life. It's plain and simple, just part of the cycle of life, and we need to accept it and live it.
Right.
It can be one of the most positive, joyful periods of our life too. There's no reason why it can't be.
Absolutely. And just to say, before, there may be people who think, but once women never used to live beyond menopause, because that's so often thrown at me. And I've written about that on my website and the blog if people want to go and read more. But that's not true either, right? Because people look at these charts of life expectancy and they say, 150 years ago, everyone was dropping off at 40. No, that's average life expectancy. Through the ages, there was a huge number of the amount of child mortality was really, really high. And so you had, I can tell you about 16th century England, where 1/3 of children didn't make it past the age of 6, and 2/3 didn't make it past the age of 16. Now, if you understand how averages work, right, if all those people are dying off before they reach 16, that brings down the average age of life expectancy, right? But once people, men and women, made it through to adulthood, they could be expected to live into their 70s and beyond. And that's what we see, by the way, in contemporary hunter-gatherer societies that don't have access to modern medicine. Where, there's this argument, it's only because of modern medicine that we're living so long, and that's why women are suffering in menopause. No, it's not true. And throughout history, we can find examples of women who lived beyond menopause. And actually, menopause was written about in Roman times, and not as like a freak of nature. It was because there were menopausal women in Roman times. So
fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been such a good discussion. Thank you so much. I always end every session with one question, and I'm going to ask you the question now. So in one sentence or so, if you could give your younger self some advice, if you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah,
knowing what you know now.
Yeah, I would say tune into your body because it is brilliant, and take your thoughts lighter.
Perfect. That's just a wonderful way to end this. Thank you so much, Tanya. I've loved having you in your discussion. I have to tell you, I've learned a lot, especially the historical piece of menopause is fascinating, really fascinating. Even the orca whales, I had no idea. I love that.
I know. Well, it's like when you start researching, you can find, oh goodness, like this exists and this exists. And, no one ever talks about that because it doesn't fit into the dominant narrative.
Yep.
So like I said, I'm so happy that I can share with your listeners and with you, what I've spent years researching to bring, to be able to share to the world, with the world. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you can, take a moment and give us a review. And please join the VIP room in Facebook for more discussion and insights. You can find us at Graceful Healing Podcast VIP room. See you there and see you next time.